So, as Jim said, my name is Wes Gilbert. I work in client services with Pulsara. I've been with the company for a little over 2 years. And before I get more into my background, I just wanted to say thanks again to Jim, Anne-Marie, Diane, and a lot of others here at the hospital. I don't know if you guys realize, but I think this project has been a long time coming. There's been a tremendous amount of work that's been done on the front end by these folks here in the hospital. So a great deal of thanks is due to you guys. So yeah, I've been with Pulsara for a couple of years and started out my healthcare career about 15 years ago. Started out as a firefighter paramedic in East Texas, did that for 10 years with a pretty large city department there, and had a great experience and a great career there, but then decided to move away from the pre-hospital setting and move more into the hospital setting, and spent the next 4 years as a clinical informaticist with a large healthcare organization there in East Texas, which was a great experience for me because having all of my clinical background in pre-hospital, it really gave me a good opportunity to understand, to better understand the workflows that happen in the hospital with the various service lines and be able to implement a lot of really good products, including an EHR with 14 hospitals, which was an absolute, I think that's what started giving me some gray hair. But anyway, it's really good to be with you guys. So I guess really kind of before we get started, kind of a show of hands, I like to try to figure out how familiar my audience is with the Pulsara platform. So I know you guys have probably had a lot of emails, you may have seen some demos, but who here has actually seen a demo of the product in person? A couple of people? Great. So this will be pretty new for most of you. That's good. Well, in its simplest form, people always say, what is Pulsara? Is it an app that I download on my phone or my iPad? And well, the answer to that is yes, in its simplest form. But Pulsara it's real-time team communication across healthcare entities. And so what Pulsara does is it enables us to use technology that most of us use on a daily basis anyway, being our smartphones, tablets, to be able to take the whole patient journey into account and be able to communicate across a common platform. So I know when I was working as a paramedic, typically, and this may be what you guys are doing now as well, but we'd have our patient in the back of the ambulance, we treat them, we get them to the hospital for definitive care, and I would call on the radio or the phone, call the ED, give my patient report, let them know what I'm bringing in. That's great, gets them the information that they need, gets them a chance to start getting teams notified that need to be there to take care of the patient. But what begins to happen is I get to the hospital, and I worked at a pretty busy level 1 trauma center, and we'd roll through the doors, and even having a robust system that we had there, one of the first questions that the charge nurse would ask me is, who is this? What are you bringing me? And it's really no fault of their own. They're very busy. There's a lot of things going on there. There's probably 10 to 15 other EMS patients that are being brought in at the same time. So I get to give my story a second time. Okay, not that big of a deal. Well, they give me a room assignment, I go into that room, and then I get to give my story a third time to the nurse that's actually going to take care of the patient. And then in comes the physician, I get to give the story a fourth time. So before you know it, we're telling the patient story so many times, and depending on the acuity of the patient, that story can change a little bit. Even doing our due diligence as a good pre-hospital healthcare provider, we still tend to, at least I did, I don't want to put this on you guys, but leave out little bits of information every time I tell the story. So with Pulsara, what that gives me a chance to do is to start that patient case in the field, put the pertinent medical history in, or not medical history, but the pertinent medical information in. It's a small amount of information, as you guys will see. And as I activate that case at the hospital, all of a sudden, all that information that I have and that I would give over the radio or give over the phone and tell multiple times, it's all there in that one communication platform for all the teams to be able to digest and use. So it really helps to keep that story the same. It's not that I'm not going to use one-to-one communication, that I'm not going to talk with that nurse, or that I'm not going to talk with that physician. We're still going to do that. But it puts the information out there for the broad spectrum, the broad team, everyone else that's going to care for that patient later on down the road. So now, all the information that you had at first medical contact, if it's a STEMI case, well, everyone on the cath lab is going to have that same information. That cardiologist is going to have that same information. The folks in the ER, house supervisors. I mean, if you can think of a team, they're probably in Pulsara, and they're going to have that same information. And so that's really exciting, I know, for me. I wish I would have had it when I was working in the field. But anyway, so in a nutshell, that's Pulsara. I think what we're going to focus on this morning is a couple of things. So we're going to talk about the app itself, and I'm going to show you guys how to use it. The good thing about this is all you guys are going to find that it's very, very simple to use. I mean, it's a few taps of a button, you put in minimal patient information, and when you hit alert, it goes to the receiving hospital ED, and then they have all that information. That's pretty much it. There's some other things that come into play as well. You know, there's team messaging that you can use, being you can message the hospital, they can message you back. There's direct calling that you can do, and pretty soon, in about another month, we're actually going to be releasing our video feature and audio clips, which is going to enable you to record little excerpts of audio and be able to have a one-to-one video session with a provider. And kind of a use case for that, the video thing to me is really neat. It's going to be neat to see how the different hospitals and how the different EMS agencies utilize that. There's so many use cases that I can think of, but you know, one of our clients that we were on site with a couple of weeks ago, their head of their neurohospitalist there in the hospital, she actually gets alerted on every acute stroke case that EMS calls into the hospital. And that's something that they're already doing, so they can go ahead and they can kind of start getting that, you know, that stroke assessment done, and that neurologist can start making decisions as far as, you know, is this going to be an endovascular case or not. But what they're going to do is that neurologist is actually going to initiate a video conversation with the medic in the field, where she can actually, you know, do an NIH and start to get that more comprehensive stroke evaluation. So a lot of really different use cases there. But what I'll do, so I have the Pulsara app up on the screen. We're going to go through that, start a couple of cases so you guys can see that. And then afterwards, we'll go over the administrative dashboard portion of it for those of you that are going to be admins, which is where you actually go in, you build out your system, you build your messages, you can do QA, you can export case information, and get all the info that you need. So I apologize, I don't have a cord that's long enough to reach from the back to the front, so as I move around back there, you guys are going to kind of have to pivot your heads. And feel free, as we're going through this, I want this to be interactive. I want you guys to ask questions. I know you probably have a whole lot of questions that you want to ask and maybe things to clarify, so I encourage you to do that. So with that, I'm going to walk back here to the back of the room. And so what I'm going to be doing, I'm actually going to be playing two roles. I'm going to be playing the role of the paramedic, which is the device that you guys see up on the screen. And then I have another device in my hands here, which is actually going to be playing the role of the receiving ED. Now, I'm not going to put this one up on the screen because for the purposes of this training, it's not as pertinent as what you guys are going to be doing up here. But if at any time you do have any questions about that part of it, just feel free to ask. So, as you guys probably know, Pulsara is a mobile app. It's developed for iOS and Android. You can use it on iPhones, iPads, Android phones, and some Android tablets now. It's also available for. It's a free download. Of course, it does rely upon the fact that you have, you know, an active contract with your agency and have a user account. So theoretically, as long as you have a user account, you can log in on any device, anywhere that has Pulsara. So what I'm going to do, the first time you open it, it's going to ask you for a username and a password. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in here. And then once I sign on, it's going to bring me to another screen that says EMS Shift. So what I want you guys to understand is at the top where it says, who are you working with? This gives you the opportunity to put your partner that may be with you for the shift. You can put up to 2 additional people. Now, understand that this portion of it, it's not required. You don't have to put an additional person. But what that does, it does a couple of things. Number one, it puts you and your partner as members on that case whenever you go into the back end and look at the case, or when the hospital looks at the EMS portion to see who's actually bringing them the patient.
So, Wes, does that mean then that those members would have access to the case if they weren't listed
That's correct. That's correct. So, that's a good question. So the answer to that is yes. The answer to that is yes and no. So, and we'll get into this in a minute. You actually have a patient list. If you're not listed as one of these team members, if you go into your patient list, you're not going to see this case. Now, there is a break the glass feature because there are edge cases and corner cases out there where you may need to be able to access a case from another provider. So there is an ability to do that. However, it's logged and it says, "Are you sure you want to do this?" So yes, you can. But so that is optional. The other thing that it does, if you do add your partner, let's say you have a device on the truck, which I believe is what's going to be happening with most of you guys, that is going to stay logged in. If your agency allows for it, again, that's the big key here. We have a lot of users that use their own personal device as well. So what this does is you have your device on the truck. If your partner is listed on there as well, any alerts that come back to your device for messages and things like that, they would also get on their device. So in essence, it would enable both of you to be able to have access to this case either at the same time or because you never know what's going to happen, especially in EMS. So enough about that. What you would do is you would just hit the drop down. Now, I don't have one saved in here, but you would have all the members listed under there that are available for you to choose from your agency. The next thing that you see is EMS unit. This is plain and simple. This is where you're actually going to select the unit that you're assigned on for that shift. I just have one in here right now, Medic 10, but what you would do, you would select that and hit done. What that does is when you start a case and the hospital receives it, not only are they going to know the EMS agency that's bringing in the case and the paramedics that are bringing it in, but they're also going to know the truck number. So that's another really good piece of information for them to have. The last thing that you'll see on the bottom is unit phone number. Now, once you put this in, it will be there the next time you log in. Now, it does give you the ability to change it. So let's say maybe the device that you guys typically use on your truck every shift, maybe it's broken and they had to give you a loaner. That device has another phone number. Well, this is where you could go in, you could back that out, and you could store that number. You may be asking, well, what is that for? Well, as you'll see, as you start a case, once the hospital gets that, in their EMS section, there's actually a telephone icon next to the EMS unit number that's bringing the patient in. What that enables them to do is to be able to give them the number to call you guys if they want to speak with you directly. That way we're not having to dig through contacts and phones, Rolodexes, all these other neat methods that we use to try to keep information. So that's what's available on that screen. So you're going to set these things, and keep in mind this is kind of a once and done thing unless you want to go back in and change it. So every time you log in at the beginning of a shift, you're going to need to qualify this. Other than that, you won't need to change it unless there actually is a change. So I'm going to hit continue. And that's telling me that it's been too long since I've logged out, so let's do that again. All right, perfect. So once you log in, everything is saved, and this is kind of our home page, if you will. So you'll see 3 different modules that are available to you: STEMI, Stroke, General. Traditionally, we were just STEMI and Stroke, time-sensitive emergencies. About 18 months ago or so, we did, or actually it's probably been about a year ago, we did bring in this general patient module. Obviously, STEMI is for STEMIs, Stroke is for strokes. General is really going to be for anything else that you're going to activate that's not a STEMI or a stroke. So your nausea and vomiting, your limb fracture. It can be used for traumas, but I know after talking to Jim, there's some more discussion that's going to be done around that as we talk with our trauma department. But we are actually in the process of building a dedicated trauma module as well. So there's so many different things that come to play in trauma with acuities, levels, how are we going to activate. So all that is going to be released in the near future. But yes?
I talked to Dr. Levy this morning, and he's on board with us moving forward.
Okay, well, very good. So in that case, we could use general for our trauma case. And so what we'll do, we'll go through all 3 of these so you guys can understand how this works. Let me make sure I'm still logged in over here. All right, so let's say we're going to, I think my cable here is giving me problems. Let's say that we run a case, chest pain, ACS, whatever, we do a 12 lead, we determine this is going to be a STEMI patient. Well, as we all know, it's very important that we get that information to the ED as soon as possible so that they can activate the cath lab, get the people in place that need to be there to care for that patient. So we're going to tap on the STEMI module. I'm not sure why it keeps logging me out here. All right. It's kind of hard to see on the screen, but as you guys can see, any field that's red and has a caution triangle out to the right of it, that is what we call a required field. That means you must enter a piece of information in there in order to be able to start the case. Now, the good thing, there's only about 6 of these. Everything else is really good information to have, but you don't necessarily have to put it to start that case. So what we're going to do, first of all, of course, is we're going to select our destination hospital. And you guys, ignore at the bottom where it says Pulsara Test. You guys will only see the hospitals that use Pulsara that you're actually going to be taking patients to. So Riverbend, University District, Cottage Grove, and Peace Harbor. So I'm going to select Riverbend.
Mackenzie William's going to be on there.
Yes, yes, very good. I'm glad you brought that up. I apologize. Yes, Willamette is going to be on there as well. We're in the process of starting our implementation process with them, but we all plan to go up at the same time around the 17th. So that's a good thing. Thanks for bringing that up. So the first thing that we're going to do after we select the destination hospital is we're going to choose our at-patient time. Now, understand this is not necessarily an on-scene time. Now, why do I say that? Well, we all know there may be times where we get on scene, but it's still 3 or 4 minutes until we actually make contact with our patient. So, yes, I fully understand that you guys, your CAD system keeps up with this. It's probably automatically in your PCR. But the reason why we're going to put this in is because that is firmly going to establish our first medical contact with the patient. And any of you that have ever worked in the ED will understand oftentimes that's a pretty difficult metric to get in the hospital without having to get it directly from EMS. So again, this is going to establish first medical contact time, and then it's going to ask for a scene departure time. The reason why we're going to put that is because you'll notice as soon as I hit scene departure, ETA underneath automatically fills in. So it's going to use the GPS location that's in the device. It's going to capture that one time, and it's going to calculate an estimated time of arrival to the hospital that you're transporting a patient to. It doesn't update in real time, so it's kind of a once and done thing. But you know, let's say you're transporting the patient, you have a major delay for whatever reason. Maybe you have to pull over, intubate your patient. I don't know. There's a whole myriad of crazy things that could happen. You can go back and you can make a change to that field. And while we're talking about that, anywhere in the app that you see a time field, when you tap on it, it's going to automatically default to now. But you can roll that back if you need to. Let's say we actually departed the scene 1 minute ago. I can roll that back and hit done. All right. So this is the next thing. This is really important. It's going to ask for a patient name. So you can put first and last name. You can put initials. It's really going to be up to what your protocol is and what the ED wants to receive. Now, hopefully, we're going to know our patient name if we can get that from them. It doesn't take long to enter, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to say test, STEMI, and hit done. And what this does is this opens up that common line of communication. So by entering the patient name, we've created that single line of communication that's going to be used throughout the care of this patient in Pulsara. So at this point in time, I've entered everything that I have to that's required. I could go ahead and scroll all the way to the bottom and hit alert and come back and add things later. But the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put a birth date in. Again, you don't have to put it in. You've got a couple of options. If you know the date of birth, you can put the date of birth and hit set age, and then it will automatically calculate the age. Or you can just put in an age. But let's say February 15th, 1949, set age, tells me it's 69 years old. Let's say this is a male patient. Height and weight, it's good information. I don't have to put it. I'm probably going to leave it blank. All right, so the next thing that we're going to do is, what's the next important piece of information that we want to make sure we get to the hospital for this STEMI patient? Exactly, we want to get that 12 lead. So I understand that some of you guys, if not all of you, are probably, does everyone in here currently transmit your 12 lead directly from the monitor? No? Does anyone do that? Awesome. Well, that's good because now you're going to have the ability to do that. So I know when I was working in EMS, we used LifePak 12s at the time. We did have the ability to transmit directly from the monitor to the ED, but this is what we found happened is, number one, if you've never gone through and tried to enter a patient name in a LifePak, it's a terrible, arduous process. It takes a while to do it. But after we did that and we would transmit that, what we would find is if it worked, yeah, it may go to the ED, but it would go to some obscure email inbox somewhere, or it would print out on some printer in the back of the ER that has 1.5 inches worth of dust on the top. And again, it's all well-intentioned, but in theory it works great, but in practicality it does not tend to work. Again, that's not always, but that's what I found to be true. So what we're going to do, we're going to leverage what every single smart device has, and that's a camera. So we're going to do our 12 lead, we're going to print that 12 lead out, and then you'll see a button up here that says Image ECG. So if I tap on that, what it's going to do, it's going to launch the camera on my device, and I don't have a 12 lead here printed to take a picture of, but let's say this is our 12 lead. I'm going to take a picture of it, and then it kind of gives you a preview. If you like it, say use photo, it's going to upload that picture in real time to the case. Now, a couple of things here that I always get asked, so I'm going to go ahead and answer this. Everyone wants to know, is this image going to be stored on my phone or on my smart device that I'm using to start this case? And the answer to that is no. As you take this image, it uploads it in real time. So if someone was to get a hold of your phone or your device, and let's say they knew the password to get into your phone and they knew the password to get into your account, you could go to the camera roll and you're never going to see these images. They do not live on the device. So I've captured that image. I'm going to hit back, and you'll see under Image ECG now we have a little blue 1 badge, which just tells you how many images we currently have. Now, something else that's really good to capture, if you can, is the patient driver's license. And the reason why we want to do that is because, typically when you get into the hospital, a lot of times what's the first thing we have to do? Well, we have to stop at a registration window, give our patient information, they put them into the computer, because they can't even put orders in until they have that patient registered. So the theory behind this is get the image of the driver's license attached. Once you alert it, ED registration is also going to get this case. They can look at that image and they can probably register that patient using that driver's license. Something else that you can take an image of if you want, if they have a medication list, because it's not very often that we get to a patient and they have 1 or 2 medications that, number one, they know the name of, number two, they know the dosage. They usually hand you a gallon Ziploc freezer bag with a bunch of pills in it or a pill box. So if they have a medication list, you can take an image of the list. So you can take up to 10 images on a case. You have lots of options there. So we've got our image. The next thing that we have the option to enter is vital signs and labs. Again, this is not required information to start the case, but it is medically pertinent. So a couple of things just to point out here with vital signs. If you tap on vitals, you are presented with, goodness gracious. I'm going to have to go in the back end and fix this setting. I apologize. Sorry about this, guys. All right. All right, when you tap on vitals, you do have the ability to put discrete information in. Now, I do realize that, this takes a couple of seconds. It doesn't take long, but it does take a little bit longer. One thing that you can do, one place that you have where you have all this information is where? On your monitor, right? We have a lot of clients that open up the camera and they take a picture of the monitor. It's up to you how you want to do it. So at this point, we're going to hit alert. What this does is you'll see at the bottom it says patient registered successfully. Now, what's going to happen on the other end, and I don't know if you guys can hear this, it starts out really quiet and it gets louder and louder and louder. So in the ED, this is what they're going to have. They're going to have an alert that's going off that says, hey, you have a new STEMI patient coming in, and it tells them, this may be a bug. I'm going to have to work on that. It tells them that they have a new STEMI patient coming in, and it also gives them the ETA. So once they open up that case, I apologize, guys. And they get the alert. What you're going to see is you're going to get a pushback that says, hey, Riverbend Hospital or whatever hospital you're transporting to has acknowledged the patient. So that kind of closes that loop of communication. So where you would call the information in on the radio or on the phone, you'd give it to them if you could get through, and then they say, okay, we'll see you in 10 minutes or whatever your time is. Now you know that they know you're coming, because you will not see this unless they actually hit go on that patient. So a couple of things here that you might do. Let's say you start a case, and maybe a minute and a half, 90 seconds, 2 minutes goes by, and you haven't gotten this. At that point in time, I would probably give them a call and say, hey, just making sure that you know about our patient that's coming in. So really at that point in time, your job is pretty much done. You're going to continue to treat your patient. You're going to get them to the hospital and turn them over for more definitive care. Now, a couple of things that can happen. You do have the ability to do HIPAA-compliant text messaging through the app. And this goes both ways. So you guys can message, the hospital can message you as well. So what you might see, the hospital may go in here and they may put this message. And when they send the message, you'll get another notification on your device that says, hey, a new message has been added. So if you hit OK, you're going to see at the bottom on the right that little message blurb. That means that we have one new message that's unread. Can you guys see that? It's a little bit dark. But if I tap on that and open it, it's going to give me the message. So at this case, they said, hey, go straight to the cath lab. And it's always going to be labeled on the message, number one, the facility that it came from, the name of the person that sent it, and the date and the time that message was sent. And so any of these messages that you may use, they're all captured in the back end on this case. They're appended to the case. So if someone wants to go in the back end and look at those, they can. You can also see them at any time just by tapping on this again. So any message that's sent or received will be here in a running list, just like in a conversation view, like you would see when you open your text messages on your phone. So there's accountability there. Now, one thing to understand is anytime you send a message, it does go out to the broad team. So everyone that's a part of this case is going to see that message. So just something to keep in mind. And so on the EMS end, you have a couple of options. If you want to send a message, when you tap on the message blurb, you'll see free text, or if there's any template messages that have been set up for your agency, you'll see those listed below. So if I tap free text, obviously it's going to work just like a text message. I would tap in my message, hit send, and it would send that. And then there's my hospital receiving it. Or if you have, and we can set up templated messages, you guys actually have control of this on your admin settings. Let's say your patient goes into cardiac arrest. You've got a lot of work on your hands. You don't want to have to be sitting in here typing in patient is in cardiac arrest. So what you could do, you could just set up a template message called cardiac arrest. I hit 2 button taps and it sends the verbiage, patient is now in cardiac arrest, or whatever verbiage that you guys choose to put in there. Another one that you could put in there, patient is intubated and on a ventilator. Well, that's a lot of information to put in. So I would highly encourage you guys to utilize the template messages. So that's messaging. Now, you're going to get the patient to the hospital. They're going to take care of the patient. Let's say that patient ends up getting a stent. Well, the cool thing is, I know when I was working in the field, a lot of times it was very difficult to get our patient outcomes. That doesn't always hold true with every agency. It really depends. But for us, we kind of had to dig a little bit. Next time I took a patient, I may be able to ask the charge nurse, hey, how'd that patient turn out? If they have time, they can tell you. Otherwise, it may be difficult. So the neat thing, let's say they go in and they put a stent. As soon as they stop the case, the field crew that brought this patient in, they're going to get a notification that says case completed, tap to view summary. So this could be, 45 minutes later, an hour later, hopefully not much longer than that. But you guys may be back at the station or back on the next patient, but this alert is going to stay there when you tap OK. It's going to show you a summary at the very top of the screen that says, hey, I know that my patient got a stent at 7:33 a.m. So that's really cool closure for you guys. It gives us a chance to know that, hey, the care that we provided this patient was spot on. Still getting messages here. So in a nutshell, that's pretty much it as far as the STEMI case. Something else to note, we have a lot of hospital clients that what they're doing is in the cath lab, once they finish the finish the case, they'll upload a couple of images of the before and the after. So you could see the occluded artery with the lack of flow and then the flow afterwards after reperfusion. So again, there's lots of neat things. On the stroke side, we have a lot of hospitals that on endovascular cases, those interventional neurologists are actually taking a picture of the clot that they pull out. So that's just really cool. A lot of really good ways to kind of close that loop of communication and give you guys instantaneous feedback on your patient. So that is STEMI. You guys have any questions about the STEMI case? Again, we're here for I think another hour. So, all right, cool. Well, go ahead, Jim.
So, on the hospital receiving side, and for these guys too, what we'll be able to do at the end of this case is pull the whole case down as a PDF, attach it to the patient file. Will the agencies be able to go in as their administrator, pull down the case as well as part of their PDF?
Yes. Yes.
So that means that you'll be able to go in as administrators, look at the entire case, all the times, the pictures, the whatever, and then it either attaches to your medical record or pull it in for UI. So this really becomes a tool for you as well, for training and for patient follow-up as far as that goes.
Yep. Good point. Good point. And we'll get into that in a minute. So yes, there is full capabilities on the administrative side to go in and pull all of this case information, as well as the images that were attached to it, all the messages, all of your times, including the times in the hospital. So that's another good thing. You're not limited to just seeing what you did to that patient. So you're going to get to see the times that the cath lab is notified. You're going to get to see the times that the case was closed. So full transparency for that particular patient for you guys.
Specific reporting capabilities out of this, so I know you can pull the whole PDF down, but if I said, I'd like to know our, outpatient time to arrival time at the hospitals for, the last 6 months, can we pull those reports?
You can. So there are a few metrics like that are automatically calculated on the back end, things like door to balloon, first medical contact to balloon, and things like that. So some of those you can pull just in its own metric. And also, aside from PDFs, any case you can actually export to a CSV file, either a singular case or a range of cases, and that would enable you to dump those into a spreadsheet, and then you can manipulate and filter from there. Yep. So full reporting capabilities. Yes, sir.
What happens to all the timestamps and everything when you don't have service?
That's a good question. So keep in mind, Pulsara is a mobile application. I would imagine that you guys with your ePCR, you're probably connecting to a hotspot in the truck or something like that. So it's like any other piece of technology. It's only as good as the data connection that you have at the time. So if you go in and you start putting information and you hit alert, and let's say you don't have service at the moment, it may give you an error that says you don't have service. When you get back into service, it will try to resend that again for you. So.
And it'll keep the original.
Yes. Yep. So when you put whatever you're putting in, let's say for whatever reason you accidentally hit the home button and you back out of the app. Well, the next time you go into it, yes, that information will still be there. Yep. And just full transparency. So the version of the app that I'm using this morning is a new release, and I think we may actually have a bug in it, which is why it keeps telling me that my time has expired. You shouldn't see that until about 5 minutes has passed where you haven't done anything. So I'll work on that. But yes, the information that you put in, with the exception of what we were seeing, should stay in there. Good question. Anything else STEMI related? Cool. Well, the good thing about Pulsara, if you can do a STEMI case, you can do a stroke case, and you can do a general case. They all look the same. Of course, the information that you put in is going to be a little bit different based on the type of patient. But let's go in and let's go through a stroke patient now. Yes, go ahead.
So, if we have an engine company on scene and they recognize that it's a STEMI case and they start the case as a STEMI case and the transporting medic unit has not yet arrived on the scene, can they transfer that information to the medic unit cell phone or do they have to switch devices, or how do they switch that from an engine on scene iOS device to a medic unit that's incoming to be able to
Sure.
pass that on to the hospital?
Yep, that's a great question and a very good use case that happens a lot. So The quickest, most direct answer to that is the ability to do EMS handoff is not yet in place. It is currently under development. It's one of our biggest things that we're working on right now. So in that situation, what's going to happen is, depending on how your first responder system works and how far out the actual transporting agency is, a decision is going to have to be made. Is the first responder going to start the case, or is the transporting agency going to start the case? I would say the best way to do that, and again, it depends on the lapse in time. I know where I worked, there were many times where if I was on a first responding engine, we may be there for 10 minutes before the private EMS agency came on scene to transport the patient. I would say, and I would also say it would depend on if that first responding agency is ALS or if they are BLS. I would say if you have an ALS first responding agency and they recognize that this is a STEMI case or an acute stroke case, I would probably recommend go ahead and start the case. Now, the problem with that is, until we have EMS handoff, it's not going to give the ability for the transporting crew to insert themselves into that case. Does that make sense?
Couldn't you add them as a team member?
You could. There's a lot of, well, you only could if you have them set up in your agency as a team member. There are some kind of strange workarounds that we've helped agencies do in the past, because again, this is a very real thing depending on where you're at. We have, for prime example, one of our clients is the city of Colorado Springs. Colorado Springs Fire Department ALS first responds on pretty much all their cases. They have cardiac monitors. They can provide full ALS care, but AMR is the transporting agency that actually takes the patient. And so that's a big issue that they have right now, and they've been using our platform for almost a couple of years. So all this to say, you can't do it yet, but it is coming in the very near future. So good question. Thanks for bringing that up. All right, so let's just take a quick look at a stroke case. We're going to tap on stroke, and again, it's going to look the same, except everything's going to be in green. I'm going to select my destination hospital, and then it's going to ask me for my at-scene time. Let's say it was actually 3 minutes ago. I'm sorry, not at-scene, at-patient. Scene departure time, auto-calculates that ETA. We're going to put in patient information here. Again, we can put date of birth, age, we don't have to. Height, weight. Now, images, again, if we can get an image of that driver's license, it's pretty key. We want to get that. I know something else on the stroke side, and Diane, I'm glad you're in here. So correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I know what they want for you guys to capture, of course, is name, your first medical contact time, stroke score, last known well, where the patient originates from. What am I missing? Probably missing a couple of things. Glucose, of course. Age. So we'll go ahead and put those things in here. So let's say 65-year-old male patient having a stroke. Also the thing, so something else I want to show you, and this is the same on STEMI as well. I didn't go into it, but next to images, you'll see a key that says contacts. What this is going to do, if there's a spouse or a witness there that witnessed this, maybe it's a wake-up stroke. Maybe they found the patient when they woke up that morning and they're having stroke-like symptoms. This gives you the ability to add a contact in, because when you put this information in, as soon as you put that in and you activate it and they have it at the hospital, I mean, if the neurologist has the case, they can go ahead if they want to, and they can start talking to these witnesses and starting to get more definitive information about that patient. So you could put in, let's say, Tim Jones. If there's actually a Tim Jones in here, I apologize. You can put a phone number if you want to. It's not required. I would suggest it if you know it, so that they can be contacted.
It's great to have the cell phone.
Yep,
number.
Sure. A good contact for that witness. And then you have an option. What type of contact is this? Witness, family, other. Really, put in what you know. Let's say it's a family member. You do have the ability to put in the relationship. And then we're going to hit save. And so what that does is it just saves that contact information. Now, one of the things that's kind of neat that you'll notice, since you put in a phone number, to the left of their name, it has a phone icon. So on the hospital side, when they receive the patient information, they can go into where it says contact, and they can tap on that button, and it's going to automatically launch the dialer on their phone with that pre-populated number so they can call them. If it's an iPad, obviously we can't make a call, but it will display the phone number for them to be able to call. All right, so the next very important thing that we want to put in there for sure is our last known well time, if we know it. Let's say the patient was last seen normal 2 hours ago. The next thing we're going to enter is our pre-hospital stroke score. So there's several options in here that you can enter: CSTAT, Cincinnati Fast, LAMS. I highly doubt anyone's going to be doing an NIH in the field. Race, Race Plus, and then other is basically just kind of a free text box. But you guys use Cincinnati and CSTAT. Okay, great. So you'll go in here, you'll choose that, and then it's going to give you the ability to qualify each parameter there. So let's say
It's not gonna give us choice of doing, so what they're supposed to do is
Cincinnati first. Yep, you can.
and then they do this.
Yeah, that's actually the way that I would recommend doing it. So, yep, go in, choose Cincinnati Fast. You can qualify those parameters. Again, the timestamp is going to be now, but you can change that. Let's say it was 2 minutes ago. You're going to save that. And then what you'll see under stroke vitals is that Cincinnati Fast score. Now, if you want to do the CSTAT, let's just add another one. We'll choose CSTAT. We'll qualify that, hit save. And then it's going to give us the opportunity to enter if the patient's on any anticoagulant medication. Again, this is not a required field. If you don't know, you can leave it blank. If you know, you can choose yes, put the medication name, or you can select no. And then at this point in time, of course, it gives us the ability to input vital signs, or you can snap an image. Now, on labs, we definitely want to put that glucose. I don't want to be that medic that brings a stroke patient in with a glucose of 10. So we're going to put that in here. Let's say it's 80. And then we're going to hit alert. And the same exact action that happened before on the STEMI case is going to happen on the hospital side. So you guys can hear the siren starting to go off. They know the patient's coming in. As soon as they go in and they hit go on that, you guys are going to get a notification on your device that says, hey, the hospital knows. Oops, hold on a second. Sorry about that. Hospital knows that you're coming in. So at this point in time, you can continue to treat your patient and get them to the hospital. Something else to point out is, let's say you have a change in the patient. Maybe the blood pressure just continues to elevate and you want to be able to put that in there. You can go in at any time and you can add additional vitals, you can add additional labs, you can do those serially. So anytime you go in here and you add another parameter, it's always going to list that and it's going to be time-stamped. So again, if you guys want to do that, you can. A good thing is that anytime you update any information or add additional information, the hospital does get notified, hey, new vitals added. So again, you have the ability to do your template or your free text messaging. And yeah, you're going to get your patient to the hospital. They're going to treat them. Again, whenever they close out the case, you will get a push notification that lets you know the case has been closed, and you'll get to view that summary at the top. So again, it works very much the same as it does STEMI. Obviously, some of the information is a little bit different. Any questions there related to the stroke alerts?
Door time, do we have to hit a button?
You don't. So, yep, and I'm glad you pointed that out. There are a couple of timers that you see at the bottom. So the first one on the left is that counting up from the last known well time, which is a really good visual indicator really for everyone. So if you're within that window, it stays green. I think once you get out to 4 hours, it starts to turn yellow. And then anything outside of that, it actually turns red. So at any point in time, any care provider can just glance at that clock and get a pretty good indication of what's going on. The question that he asked is about that door timer. As soon as you get to the hospital with your patient, someone there in the ED is just going to tap a button that says door time. And when they do, that'll start the door time clock. So it's another good indicator for them on their end to kind of see that counting. There's something about seeing a ticking clock that just kind of elevates your sense of awareness and helps us stay on task. So very good question. Any other questions? Yeah?
What if your patient is having a stroke and a STEMI?
A stroke and a STEMI. It's a bad day for that patient. Can happen. You would have to start both cases. I will say in the 2.5 years I've been with the company, I've yet to actually have a medic tell me that they've had to do a STEMI and a stroke case. It could happen. I'm not going to say it can't happen. But let me go a little further with that. So let me kind of tell you the Pulsara application itself has progressed a lot since it was first in its inception about 6 years ago. So kind of to give you an idea of where we're going, eventually probably what will happen is you'll go in and you'll put patient information in. And then as you get that information in there, you'll qualify the type of event that the patient is having. So maybe it's a STEMI, maybe it's a STEMI and a stroke. Maybe you don't really know at the time. Maybe you think it's just an ACS patient, but then you do another 12 lead and you decide, hey, this is actually a STEMI. Then, yeah, so that's kind of how it's going to progress. But yeah, for now, I mean, I don't know. That's a good question. Maybe choose one or the other. I probably wouldn't do both.
You have 2 patients coming in. Right?
What's that? I'm sorry.
I don't think you have 2 patients coming in.
Potentially, yeah. Because that would start 2 separate cases.
Okay.
Good question, though. So let's just look really quick at general. General is very simple. There's not a whole lot of information that needs to be put in there. Basically, the required info, of course, is the hospital again. Our first medical contact time, patient name, date of birth, age, gender, all that good stuff you can put in. Images, you can attach images as well. Again, driver's license, medication list, anything you can think of. Let's say it's an injury. Let's say it's a bone fracture. You can snap a picture of that bone fracture. Let's say you run an MVC with entrapment. It'd be excellent to be able to get a picture of that mechanism of injury to be able to give to the trauma team. So snap an image of the scene. Snap an image of that lateral side intrusion on that vehicle. There's a whole lot of things that you can do with this. It's very powerful. The next thing that you'll see, the last required field is this chief complaint box. It's basically a free text. Something else you can do is you'll see down there at the bottom next to the space bar, my little microphone. It actually does a pretty darn good job of transcribing voice, so you can do voice to text. So patient complaining of nausea and vomiting times 48 hours. There you go.
Is there a character limit?
I'm sorry?
Yeah, there's a character limit.
There is. I think it's 256. Should be plenty of characters. Now, again, something that I mentioned a little bit earlier that we're going to be releasing very soon is audio clips. So,
Now in the pictures, can you do a video?
Captured like a short video? Not yet. Not yet. That will be coming though. So again, I could put in vitals if I want to. I could put in labs. I could hit alert. Once I hit alert, that's going to go to the hospital. You're going to get the same feedback that you got whenever they accept it. And then you're going to transport your patient. You have the same messaging capabilities that you had in your other modules. So again, STEMI looks like stroke, looks like general. They're all very simple to use, requires a lot of the same information. So that's pretty much it. There's some other features that we can go into really quickly, kind of in the menu, and then I really do want to make sure we jump over into the dashboard, go over the dashboard and what that looks like really quickly. So you'll see up here at the top left-hand corner, 3 little horizontal lines. That's what we call kind of our menu button. So if you tap on that, you're going to see a list of options. Obviously, new patient. If you were on another screen and you hit new patient, it's just going to take you back to this home screen. Patients, that's going to give you a list of your patients. So the first option is my patient, of course. And those are broken up into the module. So you'll see your stroke patients up here. You'll see your STEMI patients underneath, and then you'll see your general patients there as well. You've got some other options, active, inbound, stopped. So the cases that have been stopped, you can tap on that and you can see those. History, this is going to give you the ability to see historically, your patients either over the last 7 days, 15 days, or 30 days. You can choose if you just want to see the patients that you've sent to Riverbend, then you can choose Riverbend. I don't have the other ones on here for my particular demo account, but if you wanted to see the patients that you started Pulsara cases on at the other hospitals, you could see those as well, and it would just give you a list of those patients. And you can actually tap on that patient and dive back into the case. Of course, the case has already been stopped, but you can go through there. You can see the information that was put in as well as look at those images. So EMS shift, what this does is that gets you back to that very first screen we were at. What's that? Oh, did you? Awesome, yeah. So that's a good point. Yeah, exactly. That's a good point. So anytime, Images are added. You know, you can go back in, you can look at those. What I want you guys to understand, this is not a once and done thing. You don't have to go in there, put all the information in, and then hit alert. I know time is of the essence in most of these patients. Things happen. Patients are going to be different. It may happen to where on this stroke case, you want to get the information to the hospital, but you need to care for your patient. So you may go in there, put in the required information, hit that alert button, and then come back in another minute and add, you know, any additional information that you need to. You know, ideally, hopefully we can get that information added, you know, at the beginning. It's like we have another image on a STEMI case. So yeah, so you guys can kind of see what's going on here. But, you know, as I go through this demo, it's taking me a while to put all this information in, but what you're going to find when you go in here and you're just starting a case, putting the information in, you can start a case in about 45 to 60 seconds. It doesn't take long. Log out, obviously, is going to log you out of the app. One thing that I do want to show you guys, so when you put your username and your password in, when you back out of the app, the next time you go into it, instead of it asking for, you know, to key in your username and password again, it's going to ask you for your 4-digit PIN number, which you guys will set up when you create your account. That's just a way to get you back into the app. It is secure, but it's quick. Now, for the admins that are in the room, there is a setting on the admin side that controls how often your medics are going to have to put in their username and password. So you can choose indefinite, which means once they log in, they're only going to have to put in their PIN number. They're not going to have to put username and password in again unless they manually log out. Or you can choose like 24 hours, 48 hours, all the way out to, I think it's two weeks and then indefinite. I'm not sure. I'll have to look at that. So you do have control over that. Okay, so that's pretty much it. Any other questions on the mobile app? Yes?
So, you know, it takes a while to get a 12 lead, obviously, to activate or see if it's going to be a STEMI or not.
Sure.
So if you start, say, a general patient,
Uh-huh.
can you activate a STEMI from that at all? Or do you have to...
From the general?
Yeah, from the general. Is there any way to kind of transfer that to the STEMI?
No, good question. Good question. Again, that's kind of alluding to what you were asking earlier. So no, you can't start a general case and then convert it to a STEMI case yet. That is coming. But you can start your STEMI case. You know, the image of the 12 lead is not a required field in the sense of activating the case or alerting the case. So you could go in there, put your patient information, your times, hit alert, do your 12 lead, or maybe, hopefully you've already done your 12 lead or you wouldn't know it's a STEMI yet. But then you could go back and you could take a picture of that 12 lead. And as soon as you upload it, it's going to alert the hospital that you've added that image. So, did that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay.
If you had a STEMI case though, wouldn't it alert different people? Isn't it set up
It does.
that if you did discover it that was a STEMI, then you probably should start a STEMI case because that's going to send a different alert.
Yes, absolutely.
The patient's name in it, so to cross-reference with the hospital, I don't think would be too difficult to do that. And I don't think it's going to happen that often, but if in the sense that it did, I think you could probably do that.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I didn't go in at all on the hospital side just for the sake of time. But you're exactly right. Depending on what module you choose, STEMI or stroke, there's a lot of things on the back end that are preset to alert certain teams. So for instance, on a STEMI case, when you hit STEMI, you hit alert, it goes to the hospital, they get the information. There's actually a button that they hit on their side that says activate. When they hit activate, whether it's a STEMI or a stroke, general, this doesn't apply yet, but STEMI or stroke, depending on how that's set up, yes, it's going to activate different teams. So if you do a general case, when they get that, if they hit activate, it's not going to activate the cath lab team. They could, but it would be a manual assign where they would have to go in there and choose the cath lab team. So we're all about trying to get information to the hospital as quickly and efficiently as possible and activate those teams as quickly as possible. So hopefully that maybe gives you a little bit more insight.
In regards to, I mean, we have so many chest pain patients that aren't
Sure.
STEMIs,
Yep.
so we kind of would have to wait around for that 12 lead before we can get that information in, so.
Yep.
To either category we're gonna choose.
Yeah. Again, there's definitely a great use case for that. That's the whole reason why we're putting that into development is because, you know, every iteration of our app, everything that we add comes from you guys, from our users in the field, comes from enhancement requests. So another thing of that, as you guys begin to use this, if you see something that you're thinking, man, you know, it just makes sense to be able to do this, or it would be wonderful if we could do this. We want that feedback because I can tell you with complete honesty, we have a very robust internal system of how we track every single user request. Now, that doesn't mean it's always going to make it into development, but you know, those requests that get requested by a lot of people, and it's not always the most, you know, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. That's not always true. We may only have a couple of agencies that pick up on something that's really important, and we vet that clinically, and we're like, you know what, that makes complete sense. We're going to put this in. So seriously, we encourage you guys, give us your feedback. Let us know what needs to change.
Is there a web-based program for this, or a possibility of it being web-based for us using Windows-based tablets?
Another really good question. So the answer to that is there is a web interface that you can use through a browser only on the EMS side to be able to start a case. Now, I will tell you, will it start a case? It will. I don't like it. I don't think it's the best experience because it's not, you don't get that two-way messaging back and forth. You don't get feedback. To add an image to a case, it's a little bit difficult because if it's going through a browser, so basically you'd have to snap an image, you have to set that device to save that image in a certain location, then you actually have to upload it as you would a regular file. It's not a great experience, but it's there because we have had, typically what happens is for any agency that's like, we're not using mobile devices, we're not buying iPads, we're only going to do it on our Toughbook or our Surface tablet or whatever. We're like, okay, you can use the browser version. They use it for a little bit and they're like, we're buying iPads. So the second part to that is, though, we do see a need to further develop that, and that is in process right now to further develop that out. It won't be a true like Windows-based software, but it will be a much more robust browser experience. So, good question. Well, great. Well, guys, it looks like we have about 30 minutes left, so what I'd like to do is go over the administrative dashboard and kind of what that looks like. And then after we're done with that, any time that we have left, I'll be happy to field any further questions. Give me 1 second here while I switch over.
There's a way of canceling the case, though, right?
There is.
I mean, say for instance, those guys picked up a chest pain patient, thought it was a STEMI,
Mhm.
did the 12 lead, sent it, and then the ED sent back. They thought, wait, this is a fake out, this is a non-STEMI. They could cancel it, and they
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. It can be canceled either. So once you start that case as an EMS, user, and let's say it does get to the hospital and they look at that 12 lead, and the cardiologist says, you know, I know this patient, this is normal for this patient, or this is a bundle branch block, or whatever, they can cancel it. So before they activate any teams, they can hit cancel, and you would get notification that says the case has been canceled. So let's see if I can get this to...
So I guess that would work in the other direction too. If you had a general medical that you activated, then you wanted to make it STEMI because you got a 12 lead and went, oh, this is actually STEMI. Cancel the general medical instead of STEMI?
You could.
Yeah.
Yep. That is what you would have to do. You'd have to start another case at this time.
Yep.
Give me 1 second here.
And then I noticed that when you get a message or an update, it has a certain sound. Is that changeable?
The push notification sound is not the primary alert sound that hospital users get, like the siren tones. Those are changeable.
But the push is not.
Not currently. No, it's just that tritone.
It's hard to hear in the ED.
Yeah, I mean it can be. I mean it really depends.
Can you set it to vibrate?
You can.
Or-
Keep in mind, any of the volume settings that you set on the phone, Pulsara is not going to override. So if you turn it down all the way, it's still going to get the information, but you're not going to get the audible tone. Now, same holds true with you know, if you're using an iPhone or an iPad and you put it on vibrate, the device will vibrate and you'll get the information on the screen, but you won't get the audible tone. All right. So this is what we call the administrative dashboard. Let me see if I can make this look a little bit better just a second. There we go. All right, so the administrative dashboard, this is where you do everything like user account maintenance, set up your medic units, create template messaging, review case information, things of that nature. So what I'm going to do is the easiest way to get to this is just to go to our homepage, pulsara.com, and once it loads onto our landing page, you'll see up here in the top right-hand corner a button that says Login. So if you tap on that, that's actually going to bring you to the login page for the administrative dashboard. Now I'm going to close this out because I'm actually in my demo dashboard right now. But the same holds true on the hospital side that I'll teach you guys. It knows when you log in, is that an EMS admin account or is it a hospital admin account? And so when you log in, you'll notice on the left, you have a list of options here. Anything user-related is under this drop-down. Anything case-related is under this drop-down. And then EMS agency-related is on this drop-down. So let's just talk about users really quick. So the first thing that actually loads when you log in is this. Can you guys read that? Is that too small? It says Manage Users. So the first thing that you're going to be presented with is the Manage User screen. So you'll be presented over here with a list of all of your users that are at your agency that are signed up to use Pulsara. So what I can do is if we tap on one of those users, it's gonna load all the user information here in the middle. So you're gonna see their name as was put in. It's also gonna show you what their username is. Now, you're not going to be able to see what anyone's password or 4-digit PIN number is, but you will be able to see username. This down here is email. I feel like this is too small. I'm not sure how much. Ooh, let's go with that. All right, you'll also see the email address that's assigned to their account, EMS agency name, personal phone number that's tied. That personal phone number really comes into play if you have someone that's using a personal device, because whatever number is put in here, now this one's different from the one in the app where we had the unit phone number. So this would be a personal phone number. If you're not going to use it on a personal device, then it's not really going to have any bearing. So you can put whatever. There's a few other things down here that are really used more for troubleshooting and things like that. But as someone logs in, you'll be able to see, of course, the OS version they're using on their phone, the version of the actual app, some other things like that. Something else down here that you'll notice, you have a few options. So obviously reset password is reset password. If you have a user that gets locked out of their account or they try to log in and they're like, man, I really can't remember my password, you do have the ability to do a self-password reset within the app. I didn't show it to you, but under the login screen, there's a blue link that says Forgot Password. If you tap on that, it's going to ask you to put in your username, and then when you hit Continue, the system will send you an email with a secure link to go in and reset your password. But again, it can be done from the dashboard as well. Over here, Enable User. So this particular user has not been enabled yet. But typically what you'll see is this will be yellow and it will say Disable User. So the toggle here is always going to show the state of what's going to happen if you push it. So a good use case for this is, let's say you have a medic that for whatever reason, let's say they're going to go out on FMLA for a while, or maybe they leave the department, maybe they're going to come back, maybe they're not, I don't know. You can go in and you can disable the user. So as soon as you disable someone, instantaneously they no longer have the ability to access the app. They can still open the app and they can put their username and password in, but they're going to get a message that tells them their account is not active. So they will not be able to go in and access anything that's in there. Again, if you want to re-enable them, just click the button. It's just a toggle. Hi. So the next thing, this is really important. You know, a lot of times I get asked this really more on the hospital security side, but we have full auditing capabilities both on the hospital and the EMS side. So there's two level of audit. There's actually three, but for the sake of this discussion, there's two levels of auditing that you have. So you have user level logging. So you can go in there under open activity log, and there's probably not anything on this particular user, but it would show you a list, basically everything that this user has done. Let me go to an account that's actually opened. So there you go. This is what this looks like. By default, it's going to open it to 7 days worth. You can change that, so you just qualify your date range up here to match what you want to open. But it timestamps everything. So everything that this user did, it will tell you the activity that they did and when they did it. So this really gives you a way to dive in and see everything that this particular user has done. Okay, that's pretty much everything user related. And again, all this information that I'm telling you, both on the app and the dashboard, we have training documentation available, PDF documents that will walk you through this, as well as some videos, and we'll make sure, Jim, maybe you can help me make sure that we get that information out to those guys afterwards.
What's the thought in the room right now? Are you more inclined to want to have a device per unit, or have a device for individual people within your agency? Because I'm assuming from what I saw in here, we could set up medic 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
You can.
And that's essentially the unit that would have a standard login.
Sure. Yeah, good question. So obviously from a Pulsara and a security standpoint, we don't recommend shared generic accounts. That being said, you guys can set up user accounts how you see fit. I will say we do have some EMS clients that they'll set up a generic account for Medic 2, one for Medic 3, one for Medic 647. However you want to do that, and that's one user account that whoever is on that truck for that shift, you just make sure everyone knows the login credentials, and that's how they log in. It's totally doable. It works. Everything looks the same. A couple of things that, of course, you lose by doing that. You do lose your auditing capabilities. You basically would have to go back and see, the unit that started the case and cross-reference with schedules and things like that. So you do lose a little bit of that, and you lose. So the hospital, of course, they'll see the EMS agency and the unit number that's bringing in the patient. Wouldn't be able to see the actual names of the medics. Maybe that's important, maybe that's not. But that's really for the agencies to determine how they want to do that. But yes, you absolutely can do that.
I'm just wondering too, if, say, the agency that's starting the case is a non-transporting agency, that there may be a way to add the incoming medic unit as part of the case, and then that incoming medic unit then would be privy to all that information.
You can.
Continue on adding information.
You can do that. It is a little convoluted. What I would say to that is, if we can, I really think it would be best to wait until the EMS handoff is available to do that. If it really becomes a pain point, we'll talk about that and we'll figure out. I don't like to do workarounds because that's what they are. They're workarounds, especially when we have the right way to do it that's coming out. But seriously, if that becomes an issue, there are some ways.
What's your ETA on the handoff?
It's a good question. We just had a product timeline meeting yesterday. I don't have a definite date on it. I don't, unfortunately. So the transfer feature is really more for when you're going to deliver a patient to like a non-PCI center for thrombolytics, or maybe just because the PCI center is 2 hours away and flight's not available or something. So it's really designed for kind of that hub and spoke model, or non-PCI to PCI, or like a drip and ship facility that's going to send a patient for endovascular treatment. So in the case of like diversion, like you're talking about, you could make it work that way. We don't really have anyone consuming it that way yet. We've actually had a lot of internal discussions around diversion. It happens. There's lots of many reasons why it could happen. So really, what we're looking at is giving EMS the ability to just, instead of go through like a true transfer process in Pulsara, just be able to change the destination hospital. So if the hospital you're transporting to says, hey, our CT scanner's down, take them elsewhere, then yeah, they've already selected that hospital, but that would enable them to go in and choose a different hospital and then continue the alerting structure there. So I think that's going to be a better way to do that. Diversion definitely happens, but I would say the biggest push right now is just for the interfacility transferring. I would say for right now, for the purpose of transfer, it's really going to be, because to initiate a transfer, you have to activate the case first. And so it's really going to be for those situations where EMS does end up taking the patient to hospital A and then they transfer it out. The diversion that we're talking about right now, I think is going to be, it's really going to be later to come on that feature. But, yeah. It looks like we've got about 5 minutes left. I definitely want to be able to answer a few more questions before we head out to the next session. I apologize, I did not get completely through the dashboard. We didn't even look at case information. But what I want to offer you guys, Jim, and we can talk offline about how to facilitate this, I would be more than happy to set up as many more remote sessions as we need to work with you guys to talk about getting your user accounts set up, getting your medic units built in there. I'm more than happy to do that. Jim, maybe we can kind of work offline to schedule something like that.
For the group.
Yep, it definitely does. It does create that sense of double charting. But the thing to think about here, and it's not to disqualify what you're saying, because I mean it's true. You're going to put it in two different places. The first thing on that is, you know, I think we fought for so long in EMS to be seen as a true partner in the patient care journey, because we are. I mean, we are we are clinicians, we are providers, and we've worked really hard to get there. So I think part of that is beginning to understand that, you know what, if we need to take an extra 60 seconds or 90 seconds on the front end to put it in two places, if that's going to better the patient outcome, because it's really getting that information to who it needs to go to, then I know myself, I want to be willing to do that. And that's not just a Mickey Mouse pad answer. I mean, that's serious. Now, the second part of what you said, we are currently working on integration. The first level of integration will actually be with cardiac monitors, where, you know, your 12 lead and things like that, you just be able to dump it directly into Pulsara. Patient information demographics you've put in would be able to roll over. So we are in the very beginning stages, but you guys have no idea how excited I am finally 26 months into this to say we are working on integration. I'm
How often are your
very excited.
updates?
We don't really have a set schedule, but I would say it averages, it's pretty often. If I had to put an average, 6 weeks, I don't know. It's pretty constant. The reason being, because like I said, I mean, we take these enhancement requests pretty seriously. And let me tell you how an update works. It's not like you're used to with an ePCR or anything like that. That can be a nightmare. An app update is we simply push the app update to the App Store. So when you open the app, it's going to say, hey, there's a new version available. Do you want to download it? You say yes. It downloads it downloads it from the App Store onto your device, and then you use it. Now, we don't just put a new version out there and let you download it not knowing anything about it. So anytime we release a new version, we send out, there's 2 levels of contact. The first thing is we have a very nice document that we put out with all the new features, screenshots, what it's going to look like, what it's going to do. And about 2 weeks prior to that release, it goes out to administrators. And then about 24 hours prior, it goes out to the end users, meaning it goes to the email address that's on file with your account. So that is important. We want you guys to get that information. We don't spam you with a bunch of other stuff. We basically just send you the updates because it's very important. And I will say this, most of the time it's not a required update. Every once in a while, meaning probably twice in the 2 years I've been with the company, we have released a version that is required. But there's always a window of opportunity, so usually it'll be, you know, maybe 2 weeks and maybe 4 weeks. But eventually it will get to a point, if you don't update it, it'll just tell you, you know, you can't log in until you update. So glad you brought that up. I don't. I can say with confidence that the monitor integration will be first. I don't have a timeline as far as EPCR or EHR integration for that matter. We know it's needed, but to be honest with you, it's one of those things where, we feel like there is a communication crisis in healthcare, and so that's really the problem that we've really set to kind of solve first. But yes, it's I'm hopeful that monitor integration definitely in this year, maybe Q3, Q4, EPCR, EHR integration. Not completely sure yet. We have started talking to partners for that, and we are in the process of hiring integration engineers. So anyway, I would say video I think will definitely enhance that, but in all honesty, any of the updates that you may give, being able to do that either with a voice clip or just with a message is usually enough.
Yeah.
Thinking, because a lot of things can happen, things can change, but a lot of times maybe updating, new set of vitals. I don't know. Maybe we have a stroke patient and they self-corrected. Maybe there's so many things that can happen. But to answer your question, I would say we don't really have anything in the mix now aside from the audio clips and two-way video.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you guys for your attentiveness. I'm sure we could probably keep going with a lot more questions, but again, what we'll do, kind of next steps from here, I'll work with Jim to make sure that we get the rest of this training out to you guys, as well as get you resources where we have a video walkthrough that basically shows you how to do what I did, start STEMI Stroke General, as well as PDF documentation for the dashboard and things like that. But again, more than happy to set up extra remote sessions if we need to. But that's all I have for you guys this morning. So